whole world is underselling us. You know it as well as I do, right? I can't think of anything better. The fact that they aren't talking about our team with the depth that we have at every position. I've been saying it to every that I've spoken to in the media, right? In terms of our goalies, our back.
All right, and we're back for another fun episode. Hopefully, Matt's audio doesn't cut out randomly as he's making a great point, and then goes muted, and then can't hear me, and then just keeps rambling on as I'm trying to mouth him that his headphone. I'm trying to do the headphones, so we'll see. Hopefully everything works out for you. I'll just say it that way. But yeah, we're gonna talk about Utah first, and then I've got a couple notes about Hopkins. I know you do as well. And then we'll kind of touch on first half. We'll obviously do Utah, and then we'll switch into the Hopkins talk because I'm going to call out some fans that need to be there on Sunday, myself included. I'll just say it that way. So we'll get into that later. But let's start out with Utah. As I titled it, back on track, right? Because they lose, and then they lose again. And then it's okay, the sky is falling. I put back on track question mark for a reason. Because were they ever off track, or was it just they faced a hot Harvard team that came in and everything happened right? And Maryland is Maryland. I'll just say it that way, Matt. Obviously, we were talking pre-show, but Maryland is Maryland, and they're just good. We all just need to accept that at this point.
Yeah. As much as I hate Tillman, he's a coach. Plays the worst style of lacrosse ever, but he's a good coach, and
I hate it too. So, but we gotta, I mean, so a couple of notes that I had, and then I'll let you get into your stuff. Held them scoreless for the first 4 minutes. Showed signs of defense. There were a couple times at this point where they showed some good signs on defense. The first 4 minutes, then the last 13 minutes and 18 seconds, they held them scoreless. Both those times. Jump out to an early lead, and obviously, I don't want to say hold on because that's not the right way to say it. Obviously, they won by 10, but I'm glad they got out to the lead in the first half. That's how I'll phrase it, because kind of gave them a little bit of cushion that they probably wouldn't have had. Let's be fair here. A couple quick notes that I had besides that. Obviously, 7-1 after the first quarter. That's your start that you want. That's just that's a perfect start. Second midfield, obviously, post Jackson Birtwistle, which we didn't talk about last time, but now he's out for the year.
Yep. I feel so bad for the kid.
Yeah, I was going to say, you can elaborate on that first.
Because I think he's already in his 5th year school-wise, because he had the 1 year where he was out, right? So I don't see him coming back. Like, I think this is it for him, unfortunately, just because of school-wise, unless he figures out, because I don't know how the eligibility stuff works and all that kind of stuff, and what percentage you have to play in order to get another year or what all that nonsense. But unless there's another like certificate or program he could do in another year, but you feel bad for the kid. He was just on the Q Sports Talk talking about how like he was so excited that this is his last year, and you kind of appreciate every practice, all that kind of stuff. And then the following game, I think it was his knee. I think he got injured. So based on how it looked from the game,
I'm going to call it the Q Sports Talk jinx. I'm going to
Yeah.
start that trend for everybody. So when it happens, it's not the Madden trend. It's not the Madden jinx. It's the Q Sport Talk jinx because they've done it with basketball. I don't want to get into basketball because obviously this is lacrosse. We talk 99% lacrosse, except for when Matt and I ramble and then we get going on random stuff. The positive thing though is Wyatt Hoddle. Wyatt Hoddle really stepped up this game.
Yep, did great stepping into the second line there.
Last year we didn't see it because he was mostly defensive. Obviously, I think we're starting to see the true talent that he has.
Yeah, he's got speed too, which is helpful.
Yeah, and then obviously Sammy. I mean, you got everybody else on the midfield line. This was the midfield game. Like this is where they kind of showed out on midfield and said, okay, not attack, take the day off, obviously, because they obviously contributed, but the midfield's got it this time. We're gonna control it. We're gonna take care.
That was one of the stories the last couple of games, right? The midfield wasn't producing in both the last two games,
right?
And then they showed, okay, we're fine. Like we're gonna be okay. And having Roa back was huge too. I think you see what they're missing when he's not there. Because he has that either way, just downhill dodge, shoot the crap out of the ball kind of guy. So it was great to see the midfield because I mean, look, Wyatt Hoddle had two. Roa had two. Leo had two. Sammy had one. Trey Deer had one. Like really, the midfield had most of our goals, and the rest of our goals were Finn had one. Peyton had one, which I loved him filling in for Finn. I hope Finn's injury isn't anything serious. I heard that from a friend that his hand was wrapped up on the sideline. I didn't notice it like while I was watching, but in the second half, his hand was wrapped or something. And then our other goals were Johnny finally scored a goal on a face-off. And then our two long pole goals from midfield when they tried to start doing the 10-man ride. So really our attack only produced 2 goals. Or no, 4 because Hilt had 2. So 4 out of 15 were our attack. The rest were midfield and kind of other random ones. So
just a spoiler for people before we continue, the person that was supposed to come on was not able to tonight. So we will be getting them on at a certain point. Forgot to mention that at the top. But yeah, that was
Jimmy McCool with an assist too on one of those long pole goals.
That's hockey. I'll say hockey assist. That's how I'll phrase that. And I hate to say it that way because obviously, like he deserves to get credit for that, right? But it's just the way it works out. I was gonna say
before we move on, hold on. I have to give one shout out, but I gotta look it up. Hold on.
Okay.
Shout out unrelated. Shout out to the RPI goalie this week. He had 2 goals against Cortland on Wednesday.
I like that.
So I don't know his name. I'm not gonna find it in time. It's gonna take me 10 minutes to find it. But shout out to RPI goalie for scoring 2 goals in their game against Cortland, and they beat Cortland. Which I don't like Cortland, so go RPI.
See, I'm a Red Dragon fan, so that my family
they're
went
all
there.
Red Dragons. Go Oneonta.
Yeah.
Although my buddy who coaches at Oswego now would kill me for saying that.
Yeah.
Oswego, then Oneonta, then Cortland at the bottom.
Right. Yeah, I was gonna say back to Syracuse, Utah. Obviously, not that I don't want to touch. That's a great little nugget there.
Yep, there you go. Move on back to Syracuse.
I was gonna say one of my notes was the Dwan and Grace pull goals. Like that was. They're fluky, obviously. It's no doubt about it. Like it's one of those either it's going in or it's going out of bounds. Like that's just there was no, especially with the 10-man.
And that makes me feel a little bit more confident going into that Colgate game next. What is it? The 22nd in 2 weeks or whatever.
Yes, it's 22nd.
Because they 10-man ride like crazy.
Yep.
So all right, can we bust a bunch of goals like that with our long poles who can shoot that accuracy? So we'll see.
We will see. It's gonna be interesting because like that's the first time in a couple of years at least that I've seen an adjustment from them adjusting to the 10-man. Obviously, it's fluky. We both know that, right? Like it's not gonna. But just having the ability to pull the trigger from where they shot the ball. And
Yeah.
I'll be honest, you could give me 100 shots, I probably wouldn't hit it with a long pole if I was shooting from that far away. Like that would.
Yeah.
In case everybody didn't see the viral video, just take a look at that if you want to see a
The
long
long
pole.
pole,
There. Yeah. But that's huge. Obviously, like that's the other note that I had was a road win, right? Because like this is that road win that Syracuse needed to kind of get. You know, you go to Maryland, the weather's crappy. Everybody knows that.
Yep.
You go out to Utah, and now you show something.
Yep.
We can play outside. We can do all that. We can have that. You know what I mean? Like, so that was a big thing to me as well. That was a road win. I mean, the defense shutting it down. The other big thing that I had on top of the defense was Utah's point leader got held to 1 point. That's your stat of the game.
Stein,
Yep.
Stein or Stein,
Yep.
whatever it is.
It looked like, to me at least, that they had Figueres on him the whole game. So that's going to be your, I'll call it the shutdown defender that you want.
Yep.
On him. So.
Well, that's Figueres' job. He's the shutdown guy.
Yep.
So. Yeah, Figueres did great on him. Jimmy had a great bounce back game too.
Yep.
Which I think that was the right call by Gary and O'Darren and the crew to not just panic and put Ippolito in. So
I had some conversations behind the scenes with people, and I kept getting asked whether Jimmy should start.
Yeah.
And I said, give him another half, right? If it happens again, if this happened again this game,
yeah,
I'm with the Ippolito starting. I'm with that if you want to go that route, but I think this time it worked out because this is a perfect get right game for Jimmy. It's not even that he had bad games, right? Because like he had a bad half against Harvard. That's what did him in. Like if we look at the whole stats and everything, Maryland, he played pretty good. Like he kept him in the game like that.
Yep.
So like that's that's like. But some of those people were very loud. I'll just say the Ippolito people were very loud in my messages that I got, which I heard a lot of good things about him. And it's not even a bad thing. I just don't think it's his time to start. That's the way that I'll say it. Like, we want to talk about that next year. We can have a different conversation. Give him a whole year to get used to everything. Like I said, second midfield, obviously we already talked about it a little bit, but Wyatt steps up. Wyatt gives him the production. The question that I have, and we did this already kind of, but now who fills in consistently? That's my question for the second line. Who's the other goal scorer that you get?
Yeah. Well, and now you got a different set of three guys, right? Because now you have Huddle in there, so they got to build a little bit of chemistry too now.
Yep.
So, that gives him at least the speed in that group.
Yeah.
Because Deer's a crafty guy, right? He's not necessarily a blaze past you kind of guy. He's a crafty guy. McCarthy seems to be a faster guy too, so they'll be a good kind of tandem duo.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see them step up. I think that one of the things that stood out to me this game too is the second half we tied them.
Right.
And I know you put in your subs, you know, some of that kind of stuff once you get so far up or partway into the fourth quarter, but like we lost the third quarter 3-0. We got sloppy again in the second half a little bit. I think we had a total of 17 turnovers, which
I have it.
You want that down
17.
To like 10 to 12 at the most, right? Like that's still a lot of turnovers. And if we play a stronger team there, do they make a comeback like Harvard did? Maybe. Like
I think so, if I'm being honest, because I think we lucked out with that.
Yeah.
I hate to say it that way. Like that's not a bad thing. Like
our man up didn't do as great yesterday either. Johnny had another great game. What did we say? He went 13 for 22. So and even the backup, I was looking at the stats. Drew Angelo.
Yep.
Went in for a couple when Johnny jumped, and he went 2 for 2, which is a good thing too.
Yep.
So maybe he's going to become the backup now. instead
Yeah,
of Archuza.
And I think the good thing is it gives him a little bit of rest. It helps out, like giving Johnny. Obviously, we've talked about it before, but the way the rule changes, it gives Johnny that little bit of a burst because we know Johnny's going to jump at some point. It's just natural.
Yeah.
Every single face-off guy does it. If you find me one, I'll give them $1 million. I'll just say it that way. It's just, obviously, like that's they all jump.
Going to be perfect.
Yeah, and you got to have obviously we talked about it before, but last year they had Mason Cone, which helped Johnny get into his groove. And I think that's what they're starting to do with Angelo. I think, give him 2 or 3 face-offs just to give Johnny a little bit of a burner if he needs it. Or if Johnny decides that he wants to shoot every time, take him out for a minute, let him kind of get his head back on straight. I'll just phrase it that way, Matt. Obviously, you know what I'm talking about. But just giving him a break. And then at the same time, you're also developing Angelo.
Yeah.
Or whoever you want. You can take a pick, and then you're not just Angelo, but you can develop throughout the year.
Yeah.
And now if Johnny somehow, I'm not wishing this on, before people come at me, if somehow Johnny gets hurt, at least now Angelo has experience versus inserting him in cold and saying, okay, we need you to win 10 faceoffs for us. Go win 10. And just so, I mean, the other thing that I noticed is the dodging goals. And that was mostly because of the midfield, right?
Yep.
What we've seen throughout the year is the attack initiates it for the most part. The backdoor cuts from the attack side. But on the midfield side, we saw the dodging goals.
Yep.
I'd love to see that. We talked about it last time. They don't have anybody. They didn't have anybody, I should say, who got by anybody. We saw it. We saw it against Utah. Now, how good Utah is versus how good Harvard is, that's a question that's going to be till the end of the year. So we're going to kind of see how Utah ends up. Obviously, record speaking for itself, Harvard is a better team, but it's just in my opinion. I think Harvard's better, if I'm being honest. And that's not even just a Syracuse goal. That's not even just a Syracuse game. They just look better. Like they look like they could challenge the Ivy. I'll just say it that way. If the way things work out, like obviously, Cornell's going to – it's just – they have a chance to be a bid stealer. That's the way that I'll say it.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't know if that's going to work out that way. Obviously, you know that, but like my gut reaction is that they're going to kind of do that. And so we'll see. Anything else you had from Syracuse, Utah?
No, just a good bounce back game overall. There's still some things that the team needs to work on, but this was a chance for them to work on it and now got to be ready to go for Hopkins because Hopkins is going to bring their A game. This is, one of the biggest rivals and I would say it's the biggest non-conference rival in college lacrosse. So, both these teams will play up for it, because it's a big deal to both teams. And and I mean Hopkins is scoring a lot.
Yeah, I was gonna say we talked
about them at the beginning of the year. Like, Melendez is shooting the heck out of the ball. Collison's a midfielder that could shoot 100 miles an hour, and it
kills me to say it. We talked about it with Maryland. It's a Maryland thing. I hate that they're succeeding. I just hate it.
Yeah.
Like, it's just because I know all the Maryland guys are going to be like, see, we're the best state for lacrosse and all this crap. And they're going to start all their crap about we produce the best talent. All I'm going to say is a lot of your kids don't come from Maryland. That's all I'm going to say. That's a shot at the Maryland people.
Looking at their top, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Their top 8 scorers, the only one of them is from Maryland.
Yeah.
And 1, 2, 3, 4 of them are from Ontario or from Canada.
And I'm sure somebody's going to be in the comments saying, Steve Maryland's mentioned again. The trolls are going to come out. The Maryland trolls are going to come out. See, you can't stop mentioning us, all that. But let's jump into Hopkins because literally, I don't. There's not much to say about Utah because we expected it. I mean, at least in my opinion, that's not like a shocker to me. The margin of victory was the shocker. I would say it that way.
I don't even that a little bit, but like I expected Utah to score more.
Yeah.
Just because the past few games our
Mm.
defense hadn't been the best. Like Maryland was pretty good, but then Harvard, our defense and our goaltending struggled a little bit. So
Right.
I kind of didn't know what to fully expect, but they brought their A game. They shut down their matchups, and they brought it. So
Let's move on to Hopkins because I jotted down some quick notes about Hopkins. I know you have some thoughts. You already kind of mentioned it about Melendez. The one note
Mhm.
for him is obviously he's the leader in points for them. So
yep,
we'll see how Syracuse wants to match up.
yeah,
And as you told me before, I'll use your words for this. The best lacrosse family right now has somebody on Hopkins. So I'll let you dive into that one if you want to take that one.
yeah. So the Hopkins leading assister, I guess I
Yep.
could call it,
Yeah.
assist maker, whatever, I don't
Yeah.
know how you phrase it, but
Right.
Brooks English, which is Sammy's brother, and they actually have another brother, Ty, who's on North Carolina. So,
Mhm.
which he's got 10 points for North Carolina. So, but yeah, so that my point to Dan earlier was the English family is the best college lacrosse family right now. So, brother versus brother, I know I think the Brooks, who's on Hopkins, was injured last year, so they didn't. One of the two of the other brothers was injured last year, so they didn't get to technically play against each other. They just saw each other after the game, kind of thing. But
I think that might be right.
I don't remember which one though. I don't know if it was the Hopkins because they're like the same colors too, so you mix them up. So,
Yeah, I think it was Carolina actually. I think that's who it was.
Yeah,
I
it
want
might
to say
have
it was
been. I don't
Carolina. It was one of the two. It's not the. I'm not gonna. Little detail that I'm not gonna fight John. Look, it was one of the two. We both know because I remember seeing the picture from them. I think
post
they
game.
posted. Yep. So obviously, like you said, he's the leader in assists. I mean, here's a crazy stat for you. If you had to guess who leads the all-time wins against the two, who would you say?
For Syracuse and Hopkins?
Yep.
Probably Hopkins.
Yep. You'd be right.
That stretch where we lost to him a lot.
Syracuse is actually 29-32 and 1 against Hopkins. So one tie, obviously.
Well, and then it was for all those years when both teams were good, it'd be back and forth.
Yep.
And then we had that stretch where we didn't play so great. So then we probably lost a few in a row to them.
I was kind of shocked that was the number of times we actually played. That was more of my shock. Like I was like, I guess Hopkins has been around.
Yeah, they're one of the oldest programs. That's why they technically have 44 national championships. To quote Brian, when they were writing on stone tablets, they were winning national championships.
And they still have the worst band ever. I'll just say it that way. So I hope I don't have to hear the band a lot on Sunday. But you also mentioned Luke Stott. I don't want to butcher that name. I think that's how you pronounce the last name. So
yeah, their goalie, Loyola transfer.
Yep. And the stat that I had, and I had to go on the Hopkins website, do a little research. He is averaging 9 goals against. So just for the record, I don't know Jimmy's average off the top of my head. I want to say I was going to say you've got your second screen pulled up, so you might be able to find
goals
it.
Against is 7.62.
Okay. So kind of around the same number. Like it's fairly even. Like their save percentage is also fairly even. Like they're right around the same.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna come down to which one of them. Obviously, Stott we expect to have a good game, right? Because he's the transfer. He's the guy that has all the experience.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a senior.
Yeah. I'm curious to see if Jimmy gets up for this game. That's how I'll phrase it. And what kind of works out that way. Like
well, and guys like Melendez and Chavette, they're gonna ping the corners.
Yeah.
Right? Like you see the highlights of their shots, and it's just like, what the hell are we doing here? Like
and I think the other thing to look for really is if they go low. Right? Because that's been Jimmy's playbook.
And the bouncers.
Yep. It's been the story on Jimmy so far. Obviously, he saved a bunch, but that seems to be the ones that he struggles with so far.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see if they're told bounce everything. Just make him. Obviously, you've got your top corner shots, you got everything else, but I'm genuinely curious if they want to go that route. Looking at their schedule, though, like, I mean, they didn't really blow out anybody. Like,
Yeah.
the only one they quote blew out was Georgetown, and that was by 5.
Yeah. Everything else has been a 1 or 2 goal.
Yeah,
couple
and,
goal
I
games.
mean, even their loss to Carolina, they lost by 1.
Well, that you like all you do in sports is compare, right? Like to try to
Yeah.
figure things out. And like they only beat Towson by a goal,
Yep.
and then that following Saturday we blew out Towson, and now Towson
Right.
is looking like terrible wins for both teams because Towson is not playing well at all.
Yeah.
And then same thing with Loyola, like they only beat Loyola by 1, but like Loyola just got crushed by Colgate.
It's
So-
ironic you say that because that was the first note that I wrote down was Towson by 1 for them. Because I was like, oh,
Yeah.
like that's the
Yeah.
compare. That's the natural comparison, right? Because
Well, it was the same thing with Maryland. Like when we go
Yeah.
into the Maryland game, like,
Yeah.
oh, they only beat Loyola by 1. Like, oh, we got this. Like, that's fine.
Yeah.
And then look what happens, you know? So it's like,
yeah,
it's just a crapshoot.
it's a crapshoot, but I think it's relevant early in the year, right? Like if you look at,
Yeah.
I say quote air quotes early in the year. Like I think if you play like if Syracuse played Towson, let's just say the last week of the schedule, right? And
Yeah.
obviously Hopkins played vice versa, however you want to phrase it. I think that's a different story, but I think you
Yeah.
can compare them to a certain extent. I don't want to put much stock into it because of the way you just said it. Like we all thought Towson was going to be good. At least in my opinion, like I thought
Yeah.
Towson was going to put up some numbers. And then,
Well,
like
I mean,
you
their
said,
midfielder was a preseason first team All American.
yeah.
So, and not that like I'm looking at
It's not
their
that
stuff now. He's got 10 goals and 5 assists. Like,
Right,
he's
like-
not doing bad, but
I think we expected them to be a better team. That's just the way. That's the easiest way that I'll say it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Look, I don't have their schedule pulled up in front of me, and I don't really. To be honest, we aren't playing Towson, so I'm not really too worried about their schedule.
yeah.
But like they beat, like I said, they lost to Carolina. They beat Denver in Denver, so they already got their. The one thing I noticed about the Hopkins schedule is they're 3-0 away. They already
Yeah.
got their road games out of the way
Yeah.
really early.
Well,
In a really good way. What's
they
that?
only have 2 more home games. I'm looking at their
Yeah.
schedule everywhere
Yeah.
they go, like everywhere else.
But it's kind of crazy, right? Because that's the unbalanced nature of the lacrosse schedule now. Because Syracuse kind of goes through the same thing. They do their stretch of home, and then it's
Yeah.
okay. Now we're away for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
At least that's what it. Just make sure that I had that.
Typically, it's been.
Yeah. But they've got their 90% home games now, except for the Cornell game, which obviously I'm not too happy about that it's on the island, but every Long Island person is really happy.
Well, it's a good recruiting tool for both teams. That's
Yeah.
what it comes down to, you know.
So the one note that I had, the major note that I had for Hopkins though, is I'm going to call out a bunch of fans because look, this is a top 10 matchup. It should be the way the rankings play out, right? Like realistically, 11, 10, it's all the same number to me. Like, and I know that people seeing this, a lot of the people that see this go to the games.
Yeah.
It's not those people that I'm calling out. I'll say it that way. It's more of the casual fans. I would love nothing more than to see the dome packed on Sunday.
Yeah.
Like,
Yep.
It's not a primetime game, but it's as primetime as you're going to get on a Sunday, and
Yeah,
it's on
Sunday
national
afternoon.
TV. Like,
Yep.
there's no football, so I don't want to hear the football excuse of I got to watch the NFL or anything like that. I don't want to hear any of that crap.
Yeah.
I would love to see I'll say 6K. That's the number that I'll set it at. And I know that's not a high number, but given the way it works out, it is.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Have that presence in the dome.
yeah, make it the Loud House.
Yep.
I mean, start screaming at every Hopkins fan. Start screaming at everybody. Scream at my favorite refs because I have a feeling one of my favorite refs is going to be there. Unfortunately, but I truly hope that a lot of people come on and support. Like I said, I know a lot of people do. This isn't like there's 100 fans that show up and we need to get to 2,000, right? This is a 2K fans show up or about average like 2 or 3K. And I'd like to see that doubled. And I'll include myself because as most people know, Matt knows, I have not been able to go to the game this year, and I will be in the Dome on Sunday. So I am very excited for that. I circled that game because I was like, that is the game I'm not missing. That is the one game that I will call off of work if I need to. Obviously, I don't have to because it works out for me, but that's the number. B1000. Let me just. The other thing that I was looking at, Matt, is their face-off guys, right? Like we talked about it a little bit pre-show. Logan Callahan is. I think I had it. We had it at 91 for 136. And then I have that backwards. He is 77 for 131. And then Johnny is 91 for 136. So they're about even. So like this is that type of game where face-offs decide it, which Syracuse team shows up, like which if they get a lead in the second half, will they put the pedal to the metal? Will they? They're going to have to. That's the way that I'll say it. Like they can't play this game where they sit back and
And last two matchups we beat them.
Last one, it's one, just one.
Okay, just last year.
Yep.
Year before that was by a goal though, right?
Yes,
that was the last minute.
Yeah.
Yep.
Like it's going to be close. I genuinely don't think this is going to be a blowout either way, unless I'm going to say this as quietly as I can, unless Syracuse doesn't show up for the big game and they magically lay an egg. I'll just phrase it that way.
Yeah.
Because Hopkins is going to come in ready, right? Like you said, they know the history. They know everything else. They know they're walking in as the favorite. And they know they're walking into the Dome. They know all the history of the Dome. They know all that. They've been there enough. I'm curious to what Gary says leading up to the game to them. I'll just phrase it that way. Like,
how does he get them up for it this week?
Yeah. I truly hope that I just hope that they come out on fire. I'll phrase it that way. We'll know in the first 5 minutes, right? Because like if
what tone is set at the beginning of the game?
Yeah, I was gonna say because if they come out like Syracuse did against Utah, except it's reverse, it's probably gonna be game over. Like you're not gonna come back that much.
Yeah.
Against Hopkins. Like you can get away with it with Utah. You can get away with it with all these other teams. You can't get away with it with the top fives. Obviously, or tops, they're number 6 right now. But either way, you can't get away with it with top 10 teams. You just can't. Like, you go down for it.
If you put the foot on the gas, you can't take it off.
Yep.
Right? We can't have a stretch of 0 goals.
Yep.
Like, I can't remember who from Stick Talk, it might have been Shane, and it was over the summer when he was talking about the PLL. Like, you can't lay a goose egg in a quarter if you want to win. For like in most situations, you can't lay a goose egg. If you go scoreless in a quarter, you're most likely not going to win. And Utah was an exception because we already were ahead by so much. But like, we got to bring it a full 60 minutes, foot on the gas. If you get ahead, step on the throat, and then like we can't get sloppy and lackadaisical or just drain the clock. Like you can't do that kind of stuff.
I'm curious to see which team shows up, right? Because like we've already said it, we're going to keep repeating it, but it's the signs from last year, right? Like we saw a team that took the foot off the gas so many times because they're like, okay, we're up 4, we're good. Okay, we're up 2 with 2 minutes to go, we're good. Just an example, but I mean, in those last 2 minutes, as well as I do, a lot can happen, right? Like they get a turnover and then it's game over. And then and then everything can change. I think
every 60 seconds guaranteed the other team gets the ball, right?
Like
there's no keep it in the box anymore.
I love that. I hated the stall game with a passion. because now you're giving these teams, like we just said, these teams that are down 2, right? They're not truly out of it.
Yeah.
They still have a shot. Now, obviously, when it gets under a minute, then it's a different ball game. But then, like when you get before you get to that point, it makes it a lot easier. Like, I'm just curious to how. I'm
Well,
curious
look
how.
at go
ahead,
back to
sorry.
Utah. Look at the Delaware-Utah game.
Yeah.
They were up, and Delaware scored a couple within the last minute or two and ended up winning that game. You know?
That's yeah, that's
so it's got to be you got to play a full 60 minutes,
right,
and
on all facets. Let's be fair here. Let's not just because like the talking of this game is going to be the defense, because we've said it before.
Yep.
At least in my opinion, the talk's going to be the defense, because the offense, for the most part, I'll say for the most part, has been able to produce all year. Right? Like they've been able to put up numbers.
Yeah.
Whether the attacks show up, whether it's the attack game or whether it's a midfield game, that's a whole different ball game. We'll get about that in a minute, because I'm curious to have your thoughts on that one. If we can actually put together both sides, right? If we put together both the attack and midfield, because we haven't had one of those this year. It's either been the attack dominating or the midfield. But like I said, most of the talk has been the defense. So, if the defense comes out and hypothetically here, but keeps Hopkins to 2 goals in the first quarter, I will be a very happy person given how Hopkins' offense runs and how everything else runs. I'll just say it that way. If they can, I think the magic number for me, I mean, just blatantly looking at their number, at their schedule, right? I think if you hold them to 10, I think that's the number you kind of want to be at. Like,
realistically, I mean, if we could hold them to 10, that would be good.
Now, Matt, you and I both know. I'm saying this just as a fan. This isn't like they have some magical plan that's going to work against Hopkins that I know about that I can't talk about. This is just a hypothetical, right? Because do I think they're going to hold Hopkins 10? I realistically don't. I'll just say it that way. Like, I don't think, and that's not even a discredit to the defense. That's more the Hopkins offense. Like, that's just like, but like, I don't know. Like, there's a good chance. Like, I think the number, like I said, the number is 10 for me. Yeah. I think if you can keep them right around that, because if they're not, they haven't done it all year, but it's just like every other sport. They're bound to have that game where their offense explodes, right? Because they've had the 13 goal games. Talking about Hopkins, obviously, they've had that. Yeah. There's a game that's going to happen this year where they probably explode for 20, or they explode for whatever the number is, right? Like, it's just a high production game. I'm just hoping and praying that it isn't Sunday.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and both teams have relatively good defenses. Like Scott Smith is All-American. Yep. And then I was looking at the other guys. It looks like Colby Washire, which I don't know if he's related to Mikey Washire, who is at Towson, maybe. I don't know if it's the same spelling last name. I butchered that, and then
that's okay. That's what we do here. We butcher a lot of things. That's okay though. That's
it looks like maybe Quentin Kilrain might be their third.
Okay.
Poll, if I'm looking at the roster and the.
I was gonna say I have to pull up the stats for a second, but
I mean they're not huge guys,
right?
You know, they're 6 foot, 5'11", 6'1", so they're not. You know, they're not a Michael Grace who's 6'6" or whatever the hell he is, giant man. But but they're solid defenders too, and we already talked about goalies, but Stott's not a slouch, you know. So offense has got to place the ball well.
Yeah, I think the thing for Stott, and you can correct. I think this is who we were talking about before. He's the local kid, correct?
Yeah, he's supposed to be a homecoming for him.
Yep, I was just gonna say that. Like, I'm curious to how he is coming into the Dome, right? Like, is there going to be that bitterness like, oh, I didn't get recruited by them, which he probably realistically did by Syracuse. Let's be fair here.
Well, and there were rumors in the offseason that he might have been one of the portal pickups that we got, but he ended up going Hopkins. So and
Right.
I don't know what happened, if they actually did pursue him or not, but like, you know, that is a storyline that's part of the game too, you know?
I was just going to say, if they didn't, we'll know game time, because there'll be a lot of chatter from a lot of people like, oh, yep.
Yeah.
And like you said, it's a homecoming for him. So there's a little bit of nerves there. I'll say it that way for him, right? Because now he's playing in front of all these people that he grew up, all these people that he went to high school with. That I think you said Jenny, right? I could be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to be correct on that part, because I know there's somebody in the troll. There's a troll or somebody that'll say, "Oh, you said Liverpool instead of Jenny."
Yeah.
But
their face-off guys too is from Rochester area.
Okay.
So
I was gonna say, you probably have the roster pulled up right now.
I do. I'm looking at it right now. Yeah,
I was gonna say that's the one thing that I forgot to print off, because I was looking at all that. But like, it's a homecoming game for both of them, right? So Rochester obviously is close enough. I'm just curious to see the game plan that everybody has for Syracuse, right? Like, you look at the man up, that kind of changed without Birtwistle. We kind of saw that against Utah a little bit.
Yeah.
We saw the struggles. We kind of talked about it a little bit pre-show. There was the struggles. I mean, they went 1 for 4. It's not like they went 0 for.
Yeah.
But there's got to be the finding the missing piece, getting the chemistry. Like, that's going to take a little bit of time. I'm glad, and I don't want this to get misconstrued this way, I'm glad that they had a game since that injury. That's the way that I'll say it.
Yeah.
Because now they can start to develop that chemistry a little bit, and hopefully they get all the rust out for the extra man.
I was telling you before we got on, but a good chunk of the game I was listening to, because it was coming from my son's soccer tournament. But who filled in that 6th spot?
I'd have to look that up. You would ask me that, and that was the one thing that I didn't have written down.
Say, what was it? Greg Elijah Brown, was he back in there?
I believe so. Yes,
okay.
I believe so.
Spot?
Once again, don't criticize me. I'm just a fan. That's all I'm going to say. That's.
Yeah, I'm pulling him up right now.
I was going to say he is in the roster book, so not that makes. Let me see if
he played at Utah. So he didn't register any shots or anything.
Yeah.
So he must have been in for that.
I think that's the one that you put in there, and you just say, okay. I
mean, he's another crafty Canadian kid, you know.
Yeah.
So he can. Him and Trey can kind of switch in and out of that.
I'm curious. I'm just curious to how the chemistry is going to be. I guess we'll find out Sunday. Like I said,
but I'm sure since Birtwistle went out, I'm sure they're getting lots of reps at practice.
Yeah, that was the thing I was going to add. Like, it's not just the game, obviously, that helps. I don't want to say helps, because that's gonna come off the wrong way towards everybody else that's listening that doesn't understand that. It helps only because they have the chemistry time, right? They have the time now to develop that.
Yeah.
Versus it happening at the beginning of Hopkins. And then you're like, crap, we have to figure out all the subbing. We have to change every subbing. I mean, we even saw it with the midfield line, right? They were able to at least get the subs. They were able to move everybody around and then kind of fill in some spots. I mean, yeah. Other than that, I actually didn't have much more about Hopkins. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to add.
No, I don't think so. I'm excited for it. This is one of my favorite games of the year. I have a visceral hatred towards Hopkins. So
I might put things in the band's insurance and mute them. I'll just say it that way. Hopefully. We all know the band's going to travel. Let's just be fair here. We all know the band is coming. So, and I'll give Hopkins fans credit, just like I do every other fan base. They travel. So there will be a lot of Hopkins fans that are in Syracuse.
Yep.
So I don't know. What would you, if you had a prediction, if you had to think of a prediction?
I think it's going to be similar to last year where it's like a 14-13,
Yep.
15-14,
Okay.
13-12, something like that, where both teams are scoring a good amount, but it's just back and forth, back and forth. I don't see either team blowing the other person out. I think both teams match up to each other well, so I think it's just going to be a slugfest, like almost kind of like the Harvard game a little bit,
Yep.
and hopefully we come out on top,
I was just gonna say, don't. Somebody's gonna hear that you compared it to the Harvard game and go, well, they lost that, and then we all know, how it worked out. We don't have to revisit that. That's I would say I'm probably right around the same number. I think I'm at 16-15 though. I'm right there.
Yeah.
Like I said, my hope is that the Syracuse defense holds them to under 10 because that's the golden number.
Yeah. And that's the thing is we can make predictions, but literally anything can happen.
Yeah, that's actually what I was gonna say. Yeah, I was just gonna say that. Now, am I gonna be wrong that they're gonna hold them to 10? I'll say 100% wrong. I'll own that. I'm just a fan. I try and explain this to people. And Matt, obviously, you and I have had conversations with other people. We're just fans. I'm not an expert. I'll keep saying it every time, so that when somebody comes at me, I'm just a fan who jumps the gun on half of my conclusions. And but you know what I mean by that, right? Because
yeah, that's funny.
They come out and blow out Hopkins, I'll come out screaming national championship. I just will. Yeah. It's just going to be the way it is. We know the message boards. You and I lurk on the message boards. We see all the people.
Yep.
Somehow, if they lose to Hopkins by 4 or 5, the Gary Gate fire crowd will come back. Yeah, they'll be there.
Dude.
Yeah. I wouldn't be shocked if some people are chanting that. That's how I'll say it. They'll do it even when they win. I've seen it happen too many times. Okay, they didn't win by more than 5. Okay, fire Gary Gate because magically it's his fault.
Yeah,
that they didn't take any shots. When he's telling them, hey, when it gets down, obviously you know the number. When it gets down to 10, take a shot. Nope, they can't score any or whatever. I'm curious to see if the Fire Pat March people are going to come out because I've heard a little bit of that. I have heard a little bit of that. At what point do we just realize that Pat March is doing as good as he can? I'll phrase it that way.
He's fine. You can scheme all you want, but the players got to execute.
Right,
and not that they're fine. We lost a couple games, so what? It's not the end of the world.
Yeah.
This guy is falling.
Well, that's case in point. I know we make a joke about it now, but that's why I titled the last episode "The Sky is Falling?" Because that's what everybody was saying, right? Yep. And then, like I said, I titled this one back to the basics because you don't know, the message board as well as I do. Even after yesterday, it was still oh, they should have beat him by more. It was okay, they should have put up 20. No. They needed a get-right game, and they got it. Whether they won by 5, whether they won by 10, whether they won by 2, whether they won by 1 in overtime. It was still the get-right game that they needed.
You had to win. That's what you needed to do. They did it.
Yeah, and hopefully this sets them up for the rest of the year, right? Because we've talked about it. Yep. Now they're starting to get into the meat of the schedule.
Yep.
Not that Maryland wasn't the meat of the schedule, but this is the real start of it.
Yeah.
Because they get, I don't want to say it this way, but they get a quote break in Manhattan.
Yeah. But then Colgate, look at Colgate.
That's why I was going to say they get the quote break for Manhattan because, look, people are going to hate it this way. I thought the same way about Harvard that I do feel about Manhattan. I'll just phrase it that way. And look what happened. There were struggles. We obviously talked about it, but there were struggles. I mean, then you've got Colgate, then you've got Virginia, then you've got Notre Dame, Cornell, and Duke, and then you finish off with Carolina, which is going to be another one. I would tell people to circle on the calendar because if Carolina keeps doing Carolina things,
they're crushing
that. they're just going to say there's going to be an assistant coach. There's going to be a couple of coaches there that people may be ripping on a little bit. And
Yep.
maybe. So, yeah, I mean, that's all I really got, Matt, unless you have anything else. I mean,
Nope.
There's
That's
not-
good with me.
like I said, there's not much to say about Utah. I'd love to do like an hour-long thing about they did this, they did that. There's not much. Like, I don't want to act like they just beat the number one team, because then I'd have an hour-long rant about, like,
We're back, baby.
yeah, I was just gonna say. Now, having said that, let's be fair here. I mean, we've kind of joked about it a little bit. If they beat Hopkins, I will have that hour-long rant ready for people to talk about this game, because I will invite every Hopkins fan that I know onto here, because I want to hear all the crap excuses, just like they want to hear all the Syracuse ones. We both know it. They're very vocal.
I'm gonna call him out specifically right now on the podcast, but I was messaging with Cam,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh, we want to have you back on again.
Yeah.
He goes, oh yeah, my schedule's really busy, whatever. It's hard to find time. He goes, but this is exact quote from the message. So I'm calling you out, Cam. He said, but you know what? If they beat Hopkins, I'll make time.
That's
So,
the feeling, right, Brian? Brian, who we could also kind of call out. I'll say it that way. You know who I'm talking about. I feel like Brian will make time. I feel like everybody. I feel like we'll get those like that's realistically. And just a spoiler, we got to kind of figure the scheduling out. But Cam did a history of SU lacrosse. We're going to talk to Cam at some point during the year, because I've talked to him before. I want to hear his actual thoughts about everything that he researched, not the stuff that was in all the videos that he did. I'm curious of what his takes were on everything that happened. So we're kind of working out the schedule with Cam. Obviously, like you just said, his schedule. I'm trying to get a couple other season ticket holders on. I'll just phrase it that way. Matt, you know who I'm talking about. I don't want to mention it by name until it actually kind of works out.
yeah.
Just to get their kind of takes, because I hope they have different takes than me. I hate to say it that way, but like I'd rather have somebody that has the different take, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, like I expect them to win 75 games. Whatever. Obviously, the number is just exaggerated, but like, so we're going to try and get a couple other people. I have a couple other people that I have to reach out to, a couple of former Syracuse players. So we're going to try and get them on. Hopefully the scheduling works out and all that fun stuff. And then, like I said, hopefully the one that tonight we can get. I'll just say it this way. I'll speak for him. I will say if they beat Hopkins, I'm pretty sure there's probably a good chance that he will come out screaming and yelling, and there's a better chance he will come on next week. I'll phrase it that way. And you,
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll end it there though, so I don't have to rant for another 15 minutes and spill all my thoughts for everything else, because I know I will. But yeah, we'll end it there. And like I said, Matt and I have kind of talked behind the scenes. We're gonna try and do it every Sunday. That's just the way both of our schedules kind of work out. It seems like that's probably try and keep it around the 8:30 time, unless one of us says differently. I'll just phrase it that way. So yeah, we'll end it there. But as always, go Orange.
Go Orange.